elementary and secondary schools. That doesn't include all those ALS and all the special programs of government. So, can you give us an overview, Elaine, USEC Elaine, of what's happening right now in education and how is the education sector coping with, well, DepEd in particular and the districts coping with the education new normal, so to speak?
Yeah. What we are doing now is we are in the middle of discussion on when to open classes. Now, while we have already decided that it will be opened on August, the definite date is still being discussed. And we are still taking into consideration all other minimum standards that the Department of Health and the IATF have required for the either opening of classes or going to general community quarantine, or if the quarantine status will be lift up, no? So anyway, ang isa yan sa pinag-uusapan natin, yung opening of classes no, sa August. Pangalawa ay how to deliver education, learning and teaching, how to deliver this in a in mixed modalities or in other different kinds of platforms kung ano man, dahil hindi naman lahat ay may internet, hindi lahat may cellphone, hindi lahat may device sa bahay, kaya inaayos natin ito kung ano-ano yung mga yugto na dapat natin ayusin para sa ganun ay may deliver natin yung education. While we have determined August to be the opening month of classes, it does not mean that during the August period, we will be meeting the students face-to-face inside the classroom. That we are still determining kung kinakailangan ba talagang magkaroon ng face-to-face, kinakailangan bang study at home, kinakailangan bang homeschooling, kinakailangan bang 1 week lang appearance sa eskwelahan, all the rest ay sa bahay na mag-aaral, anong klaseng platform yung gagamitin, and so on and so forth. These are the things that we are now discussing at the Department of Education, including what we call some non-negotiable requirements before we return to school. No? Ano yung mga kinakailangan natin ma-establish sa loob ng paaralan bago pumasok ang mga estudyante, ang mga guro at ang mga personnel o administrators ng mga eskwelahan na yan. So we have that kind of minimum health standards that we need to define and that we need to do from here on until the opening on August. And maybe within August until such time that we will be meeting face-to-face inside the classroom. So these are the things that we are busy discussing and formulating some proposals or programs and projects to be implemented just to make sure that the opening of classes will be addressed properly.
All right. So thank you, Yusek Elaine. No? There's so many people watching us. They're integrated. So this is one particular mode of delivering education, which is homeschooling. Edric, can you give us quickly, like, or briefly, how you think homeschooling would really help a lot of our stakeholders in the education sector? Edric? All right. I think Edric, can you hear us? Anyway, again, we'd like to ask Edric if he can give us an idea, like how homeschooling can really help in trying to educate the whole ecosystem of so many learners in the Philippines. No, we talk about the public school. That's about well, the public and the private school in K to 12 alone. That's about 27.2 million learners. So, can you tell us, Edric, if you're able to connect, no, how like homeschooling can really help these stakeholders?
Nato, I caught, I think, the tail end of what you were saying.
Yes.
Your question is how homeschooling can help the people who are looking at the new normal. Is that correct?
Yes, and like for example, we're saying that of course that will still decide it's August, and then from August, between now and August, like how do we do it? Like how do we educate the young people, and they're really the future of this country. So how do you think homeschooling can really help our stakeholders of the
Right. Right. I think the world of homeschooling is upon the 1.2 billion learners across the world, including the 27.2 million you mentioned, K through 12 in the Philippines, right? So the distinction that we've understood from the Department of Education, because we've been working with them even as I speak, I've been exchanging with some of the USECs as well. They've distinguished home-based learning and homeschooling. So the main difference is home-based learning still has the teachers and the school driving the learning of the child, albeit through the home using technology, versus homeschooling where the parent is driving the learning of the child. Now, to your question of how can the homeschooling infrastructure help in a time like this, one of the things we've seen, which many of the school systems are appreciating because everybody is pretty much learning from home, is scale. Homeschooling allows greater scale of the learning because there are more parents than teachers, and there are more homes than schools. So with the right technology to support the learning, then I think in terms of the new normal, this homeschooling mindset, having parents engage the child from homes, can do that, right? But the challenge that we see and the trick would be the how all that of learning and teaching their children must be willing to undertake it and must be equipped. The big word we're trying to help in education is shifting from a teacher mindset to a facilitator mindset. A facilitator, someone who does not need to have all the information that they learn. Instead, they're resourceful enough to find technology platforms like Google, which you will hear. That is transparent, teaches.
yeah. All right, Edwin. She's the president of Ahead Learning Systems or Ahead Tutorial, if you're familiar. Rosanna, before we go back to Edric, I'd like to ask you, like for example, how will tutorial sessions be given in the new normal? We know for a fact I myself used to teach in speech power, oral communication, and it's really face to face, right? So now, um, what happens now when, for example, the new normal happens? How will we be able to educate a lot of young people and college entrance exam reviews and other exams? Yeah.
Hi, thank you. We've been trying to do online tutorial and online review for the past more than 10 years now, but it's not
Okay.
getting any traction because of course maybe the interaction between student and teacher is also very important, and also the problem here is our internet service in the Philippines. But right now, na-force yung mga parents and students to get into the online tutoring. That's why we have continued our services in giving online tutorial and review right now. So continue lang po. They are in their homes and we see them really watching. Actually, we can see them actually more concentrated now. Unlike before, when there's classmates beside them, they can chat or they can look at others. Now they're only looking at the screen. So it's more effective now actually for us. And we've been giving a lot of free tutorial, free review. And we realized that not everyone can actually join us because some don't have proper internet or proper gadgets. But so we are giving a lot of free like mock exams, or we are giving sample sessions so that others can benefit also, even if they cannot really join the big long-term review. We also actually we're trying to open our online school wherein we're just putting the best of homeschooling and the real school together in one, and we're going to do it online. So there's no problem for us. We prepared for this. Actually, when we heard of COVID uh, last January, we already prepared for the worst case scenario. So we had lots of preparation. We already had the thermometers. We had UV virus killers. We had all the protocols. We had soaps and face masks and everything. And so 1 week before the quarantine, we already sent our teachers and staff home to work at home. We gave them gadgets, and so that when the quarantine started, we were really prepared, and I think we're the most prepared educational uh, institution now.
All right. Thank you, Rosanna. Everybody, it's a lot of district schools are already online and watching us from Tarlac province, from Rojas Isabela, from Bulacan, from Laguna, from South Luzon, from Mindanao, from Visayas. So again, it's really this topic is really very significant to so many people, both teachers, students, learners, and of course those who will run the schools. So right now we'd like to go to Yuki for he is the program director of CRIP. We will get to hear from him later. CRIPR is a learning platform that I think has developed the curriculum from K to 12. Is that right, Yuki?
Yes, thank you, Nato. If you allow me, let me briefly introduce Clipper, because it's not really famous still yet. So I just prepared some slides. Can you see this screen? Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, Clipper is a Japanese edtech company. We entered the Philippines back in 2014, so it's been 6 years. We are operating in 5 cities around the world. We have registered so far 4 million students and 300,000 teachers. So yeah, after this is the weekly active learners in the Philippines for last 1 year, since the beginning of last school year. As soon as the school were closed back in March, we were kind of expecting that it will be affecting the active learners, but as a result, it didn't really affect to the number of users. Our schools and our students were actually prepared for this kind of disruption. So yeah, if you can look at it, the number of students actually increased toward the end of March and gradually decreased as the school ended its school year. And we also operate in Indonesia. Indonesia, we are actually doing a different business model. We are providing directly to the students. So we are not really supporting schools, but the government of Indonesia actually reached out to us to help the situation. They also shut down the schools around middle of March. So as soon as they reach out to us, we also reach out to the schools. Then yeah, starting from the middle of March, the number of students and teachers, and also the number of assignments created throughout the month has hiked dramatically. So yeah, as I said, Paper offers the learning management system for teachers and students, and also the content creators. And also we offer quizzes, video lessons, and also downloadable study guides, and also the guides for the teachers. That's what we have been developing and what we have been doing in the Philippines for the last 6 years. Not just in the Philippines, but in Japan and Indonesia.
All right, Vicky, we will get back to you again. I'd like to greet the people from the teachers and district offices of DepEd watching from San Pablo City, from Cotabato City, from Tabagan Isabela, from Nueva Vizcaya, from Cavite, from Misamis Oriental. So, as I said earlier, a lot of people are watching us and really they want to understand what's going to happen with education in Normal. So, we'd like to call in Eileen Apollo de Jesus. Yes, she is the head of education for Southeast Asia for Google for Education. Eileen, can you tell us what Google for Education is doing right now and like um, connecting the digital divide for our learners? Yes.
Um, yes, so magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Thank you so much for attending this session today. So we have been actually responding to this crisis since as early as February. And of course, one of the larger concerns has always been the teachers and if they're actually able to do distance learning. So at Google, we actually have a couple of platforms that you can use. One of it is G Suite for Education, which includes Google Classroom, and then there's also Google Meets. And this is free for all schools to use across the globe, actually. And then the other part is, of course, we also have our devices we call Chromebooks. But then, like, these are just platforms that we provide for schools to use. The other part of it is how do we actually prepare teachers? So in the Philippines, as early as April 2 to April 7, we actually hosted a week-long webinars already for teachers, which you can find on YouTube to rewatch. And there was another series of webinars also for teachers hosted by our Google Educator groups, and more are actually coming. So we hope that this could help teachers learn and be able to manage distance learning for their students.
All right. Thank you, Susana. We'll go back.
Thank you for joining. And yeah, it's really interesting how e-learning and blended learning is suddenly becoming a trend. I mean, in just a few weeks, a few years back, it was very difficult for us to promote e-learning in schools. I remember during the time of Jason when he invented the virtual campus in 2011. This technology was just really ahead of its time. But today, there's so many teachers looking for platforms and a lot of questions on how to use the platform, on what platform to use, and where to get content. Maybe one thing that I'd like to point out in this discussion is that educators, especially teachers, should not only look at the platform uh, in terms of e-learning, but also especially look at the learner and how the platforms will be used and will be significant to the learning objectives that they've set. Because I think the tendency, and this is what I've observed in the past weeks discussing with educators and professional trainers, there's always emphasis on the platform and technology, but there's there seems to be little emphasis on the learning objectives and the learner. So I think it's very important that we focus on that as well. And we're glad to have Google and Quipper here because these are two of the bigger platforms that have worked not only on using platforms and technology, but also focusing on learning. So yeah, for now, Nato, that's what I can say.
All right. Thank you, Jen. This is really a significant thing for us in Bounce Back PH because a lot of us in the core are mostly SMEs and entrepreneurs. But then again, like for the first time, we're having this one for the education sector, and next week we will have it for the tech talk and training sector with Tesla and other training institutions. So, but for now, how do we transition USEC Alain, for example? We know for a fact that DepEd, when I was still in Congress and until now, has the biggest budget in the country. But the problem is, sabi nga nila, when we like do our strategic planning, when we budget for DepEd and all those executive offices, we didn't budget for COVID-19. So
Yeah, indeed.
yeah, what do you think will be the shifts? What paradigm shifts? What shifts in terms of budgets and allocations will happen? Because DepEd will be the key game changer here, and um, what's on DepEd's mind now, or from your lenses, what do you think is the best solution? Like, for example, a public-private sector partnership to really make this faster, make the delivery of education accelerate.
First of all, even though DepEd has the biggest budget now in the government, that biggest budget is still not enough to address all concerns of the Department of Education. I'll give you an example. Part of that biggest budget is a budget on school buildings or classrooms. We were asking for more than 170,000 classrooms last year in order to address the classroom shortage. But DBM only gave us just about some amount good only for about 40,000 classrooms. So how would you compare now that kind of budget that has been given to you on the and then on the basis of what is needed, no? Kahit na malaki yung budget mo, pinakamalaki ka sa pamahalaan, pero hindi pa sapat yan para ayusin yung mga kinakailangan ayusin sa ating kagawaran. Now, of course, we did not budget for COVID, no? And this happened this year, nag-i-start pa lang tayo, ay lumabas na ito. So, quick, what they call shifting, for example. Before we start classes now, we need to establish all the non-negotiable factors or non-negotiable items that we need inside the classroom or inside the school. For example, potable water, hand washing facilities, disinfection equipment, health and hygiene kits. All these things would eat up much of the budget that we have now. For example, instead of repairing classrooms, we now go on repairing and constructing wash facilities. Why? Because wash facilities are the first kind of intervention that we do when it comes to health and hygiene, no? Washing of hands. No? Kaya kailangan nasa school yan. Oh, how about, for example, even before they enter the school, kailangan mo kaagad ng temperature indicator, and this is about 50,000 schools that we're talking about. So even though a small amount of temperature indicator or a gun temperature gun would already cost so much, ipapasok mo pa yung readiness ng school, PPEs, disinfecting equipment and chemicals, and all other things. Hindi pa tayo pumapasok ngayon dun sa different modes of delivering education. This is just preparing the schools for the safe return to schools of our learners, personnel, and our teachers. So, yan pa lang, malaki na. And we might not be able to address all these things for the next 3 months if we start today. Kasi nga, hindi naman ganun kabilis ang pag-procure, hindi rin ganun kabilis ang pag-rehabilitate, renovate, or construct. No? We may need to have quarantine facilities in every school, and that would mean we will be establishing clinics in every school. We have clinics now, but they are only about 10-20% of the entire schools have clinics. So we might be establishing new clinics in all other schools. So yan yung mga facilities wise pa lang. No, second, we need to prepare also our platform on how to deliver teaching and learning in various modalities, whether they are face-to-face with social distancing, non-face-to-face, which means either study at home or homeschooling. So these are and then what kind of materials and what kind of support will you be providing with all these kinds of modalities? That would mean also enhancing our platform that we have now. We have DepEd Commons, enhancing the LR portal that we also have. We have also alternative modes of delivery and education, but we might go further. We might need to establish educational television, educational radio, but this matters when we would want, if we would want to reach out from the cities to the countryside, would not be undertaken within the next 3 or 4 months. No, these are also long-term plans and long-term projects that are not easily implemented and not easily established. So, but we have to start with that. That is now the framework that we have. since this is the new normal, and every now and then this virus will there will be outbreaks because of this virus and similar viruses, then we may need to set up all these things that we can activate at any given time.
Yeah. It's quite providential, Yusek, no, that I think the guests that we have today are actually uh, maximum six. Okay, so I can go out of the room so we can have the six discussants discuss the possibility of the delivery mechanisms. Um, and then who else is not here? See, then I can go for the meantime. Then I will moderate using audio. Is how can we deliver content and check for understanding with limited resources? What are the challenges of this kind of transition in education? So please give a brief answer. We know we'd like to accommodate everybody, but please just give us a few lines what you think, and yeah, please tell our stakeholders out there what you think.
Can you repeat the question, Matt?
Yeah. Well, the question is, how can we deliver content and check for understanding with limited resources? I suppose this is the training tools. And then, what are the challenges of this kind of transition in education? Because the main problem right now, what we're saying is, we have a lot of teachers who still need to retool or still adjusting to the new normal. It's going to be really a new normal. How do we do that? We have to pull the teachers, but we have to pull the students as well. So, uh, can we bring in our panelists? Can we bring in also Google Education? I'll just go out of the room. I'll just use audio to moderate.
Well, if I may, yeah, this is Yuki from Quicker. Yeah, we Quicker provide a online learning tools and also content. But I think personally, I think there's no one size fits all solution for this pandemic situation. Even after the pandemic, it's not. There's no one solution to really
That's
tackle
right.
this situation. So yeah, I mean, from my standing point, from my point, we can provide technology, we can provide the online content, we can provide online tool for those who can afford the connectivity to the internet. But for those who are not fortunate enough to have a connection to the internet, yeah, as you said, mentioned that yeah, some countries are developing a TV program to deliver the content, and some schools actually trying to deliver their content by printing and asking parents to come and pick them up. So I think it's not just one company or one government agency can solve everything, but we have to kind of bring all the wisdoms together to blend all the different modes of delivery to really meet the situation. That's my take.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you, Yuki. Yes,
Can I jump
Edric?
in? Yeah.
All
So I'm sorry I got cut off earlier in our discussion about homeschooling and home-based learning. I think this question right now, how can we help in the transition? In the same way that Yuki mentioned that the technology sector and the platforms they offer can help, one of the ways we're trying to help is with the parent involvement, because we're seeing in this new normal, parents' involvement will be key, whether they are homeschooling, so they're actually driving learning of the child, or it's home-based learning, where they're working with the teachers and the schools, right? I think the key would be for parents to be trained on not so much how to be a teacher, because we have amazing teachers and we've many of them who are tuned in, but more to be a facilitator. With the right technology, if we can empower parents on how to help augment and become facilitators of the learning, because there are a number of platforms, right? I think by doing so, then we give many of the households the ability to carry on with the learning. And as I was saying earlier, the beauty of this sort of model that we're seeing right now is there are more households than schools, and there are more parents than there are teachers. So if we can mobilize that infrastructure by proper training and proper curriculum, the technology where, as was mentioned by one of our speakers earlier, do not compromise the actual learning, I think we would have a nice winning formula. But again, there is no one size fits all. That would be maybe how the homeschoolers can help, equipping parents and giving them principles of how you can be involved in the facilitating of the teaching and learning of the child.
All right. Thank you, Edric. Um, I'm seeing the questions right now. So, for example, from Alalin Antonio, I just want to ask a few questions, Sir Ma'am. How can we be able to cater to our students where we know for a fact that there are students, especially in the remote areas, that don't have access to internet? So that's one. And then another question: how do we monitor the reading progress of our pupils in the new normal education? What are the plans of DepEd for those families in school who can afford gadgets that can be used for e-learning? So what's emerging here is that I think later we'll go to Google about this for the gadgets and maybe what we forgot to invite today was somebody from the telco. So anyway, let's hear from Eileen.
That we need to look at on this end. And the first stream is, of course, the centralized, monitoring system for DepEd, and to see like how much usage, like how the teachers are actually using the different platforms from their end. And on the other side is, of course, the teachers. So I see like, teachers are so very creative in finding ways to bring resources to their students. Like I have this teacher, she's from Mandaluyong City. She's been trying distance learning in the past year. And like, of course, one of the bigger issues is providing connectivity for the students. And what she's been able to do is actually reach out to those people like nonprofits and even some private sector companies that have been able to pitch in to provide some assistance with connectivity for the students. So like I think it works both ways. Like on the end of Department of Education, it has to be clear to them like what exactly the goals are so that they can put in a good mix of different platforms for use of teachers kasi iba-iba yung kanilang like situation. And then on the other hand, also understanding from the end of the teachers like what is it actually that everybody needs to do in order to help the teachers.
Thank you, Eileen. How about Jelix? What do you think? What can we do about this?
Well, DepEd in the private sector has a long history of partnerships, and I think this is one big opportunity where the private sector can really come in and support not just DepEd, but other private schools that may not be able to afford this kind of transition. We see here two or three concerns. First of all, of course, there's connectivity and access because not everyone has or could afford connectivity and could afford gadgets. And then second, quality. Can we ensure quality of learning in this kind of transition? And I think this is where the platforms and the content providers can also come in, given that they've done so much content over many years already. How can they help ensure quality of learning? And then third, of course, is governance, because not just I'm not just talking about DepEd, but education sector as a whole, because this is a different kind of situation that we're trying to manage. So, digital transformation governance also comes into play. And then, as you mentioned earlier, Nato, I think the telcos most probably would really have to, offer something not just to public schools, but also to the greater education sector. So, for me, if the private sector could come together and really help the education sector, I think there's more that can be done in the short span of time. Like for example, if there could be a registry for content that's already available out there. I know Quipper, for example, has grades 4 to 9 covered with their Quipper school, and then for senior high school, they have Quipper video, and then Knowledge Channel also has videos for the primary to elementary level. So if we put this all together, we will see already a an ecosystem of not just content and platforms, but an ecosystem of a response that can be activated right away for this kind of situation.
That how can DepEd afford to support the public school students and even the teachers, maski na teachers na lang, di ba? On our end, while I do not have the answer to that, I really want to know the answer to that. But on our end, we have been training teachers and school principals since 2005. And for now, we are still willing to train them how to get into digital, get online. But if they don't have any gadgets or any internet, that's really, really a big problem. But we're willing. We have been doing it for since 2005. For our own company, we have been giving free mock exams and free online sessions. They can use their smartphones to answer the tests, and they can also watch the lessons and interact. So that's our contribution.
Thank you, Rosanna. So the questions are coming in one second, one question per second from the audience. So you can just imagine how limited our time is, and if only we could have more time. But yes, let's try to tackle some of the questions. According to, I think, Noshuju Norwal, yes, we are creative, but our students' resources are so limited. Good for those who have others to help them be provided, but how about us in the provinces? Majority are poor, majority of the parents are not trained or even qualified to assist homeschooling. We do not even have complete sets of books even before COVID came. I'm seeing that what's in it for, yeah, let's not forget our learners. We are their voices. So, yes, there it is. All right. So there's so many loose ends that we really need to, I mean, cannot, of course, the government has resources, but also limited resources. And among all the departments, I think that is the most spread all throughout the country, and yet the the teacher to the education sector is so huge. Then we have questions on how about values? How do we teach values also online, or if it's not face to face? So let me go to other questions. Um, all right, so here, good afternoon. There's people watching from Misamis Oriental, Batanes, everywhere. Online classes will be feasible only if all have internet access. Resources are limited. Pupils from public schools are poor. But this is true. And despite this reality, we have a bar top notcher who's the daughter of a jeepney driver, and another bar top notcher who's coming from a poor family. So I think this is not impossible. So what do you think? How do we address the issue of resources? We in Bounce Back PH believe that maybe there's a way where we can coordinate resources and really go to the last mile. So how do we do this? How do we establish e-classrooms or virtual classrooms? Yeah, can we have Elaine or Yusuf Elaine or anybody?
Yeah, let me put something into proper perspective. For
Yeah.
example, uh, we have several objectives or specific objectives when it comes to the DepEd response on COVID-19. No, first, no, We have to protect the well-being of the learners, the teachers, and the non-teaching personnel, and prevent the further transmission of the virus. That's number one. No? Second, even though with COVID-19 there or whatever crisis we have to ensure education continuity through the K to 12 materials, various modalities, different kinds of trainings, etc. There should be education continuity. We cannot, at any cost, we cannot stop education. We have to continue that. And then the third specific aim there is we should facilitate the safe return of our teachers, learners, and even non-teaching personnel to work and to schools, no, based on these different scenarios. But then again, who will dictate the minimum standards when it comes to the health and when it comes to the question of the virus? It will always be the Department of Health or the IFTF. They have classified already the different minimum standards that we need to observe, no, and we might be we might be following up that kind of approach. For example, every city, every province, every town, every region may be classified in accordance to the risk that they have. Do they have a low risk situation? Do they have a medium risk? Do they have a high risk? Are they in GCQ or ECQ? Because all these scenarios and all these what they call status would determine what kind of delivery mode will we need to apply. Okay, and then second, there are things that we can change and there are things that we cannot change. For example, in the Philippines, uh, not all areas in the Philippines have cell phone signals. That would already be an indication that in several areas in the Philippines, we cannot deliver education via online or via internet because not all areas have signal of the cell phone. No? And we cannot do anything about this within the next 2 to 3 years because these are telco based and these are not even the Department of Education cannot even change this kind of situation that we have. But what are the other technology that have reached until the last mile schools, the so-called last mile schools? Well, we have television, we have radio, but then again, we'll have to. Another question is, how do we apply education in TV and in radio? Are we equipped at this moment to a broadcast of teaching and learning in the classroom through the use of TV and through the use of radios? Maybe we can set that up within the next 3 months. But which channel do we use? Oh, we will not be able to only deliver education for the kinder for 1 hour a day, for the grade 1 for 1 hour a day, or for grade 2 for 1 hour a day. Then you will need not only one channel, but about 3 or 4 channels in delivering that. And the same will be true when it comes to the radio station. So all these things can be taken. All these technologies can be taken in totality and to apply all these things in areas where there are different kinds of status when it comes to the risk of having this virus, whether they are low or they are high. No. What we are telling is that there are existing frameworks, there are already proposed frameworks, and there are fractions or there are proposals that we need to do. We have to combine everything. There is no one size fits all solution to all these things. And we will be needing not only the efforts of the entire government, but of the private sector and the community. We need to collaborate with everybody and to have a delivery of these things because even the number of devices that we have in every household is even being questioned right now whether they are correct or not. Now, for example, the data that we have in the worldwide scenario is that the Filipinos or the Philippines have 153% penetration of cell phones inside our country. 153%. No. But 153% might be good only in urban communities where a person can have 1, 2, or 3 cell phones, but not in other areas. No? And we need to be guided by all these statistics and all these situations that we have in order to apply the kind of modality or the kind of learning and teaching that we need to employ. Again, there is no correct or mono solution for all of these things. Every situation, every area, and every kind of platform will be used, and we need to see to it that we can deliver all these things. But one thing should be sure here: we cannot stop education. We have to continue.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Yusek. No? In some countries, internet access is no longer a privilege but a right, and I think that's what this country needs to do. Really move to the last mile to really create an inclusive environment for learning. And I think Yusek Alain is right. There's no one fit solution for everything. What's needed is really different modalities. So, um, can we ask where Jelix? What do you think?
Nato, since the spirit of bounce back, that it's about the private sector, the businesses helping each other. I'd like to ask Yusek Alain, sir, based on your analysis or your initial assessment, in which areas of this transition to a new normal or a digital transformation, in which areas do you think the schools need help the most?
At the moment, maybe the most possible areas that we may need several kinds of interventions are those areas under ECQs, because under areas under ECQs, we cannot resolve this matter in the next 2 weeks or in the next 3 months. This will go on and on. No, remember, our quarantine, our community quarantine, have been resorted to not to or not to remove the virus, but only to hinder its spread. No, we are not killing the virus because of the quarantine. Oh, what the quarantine is doing is only to slow down the distribution or the dissemination of this virus. So once the ECQ or the GCQ, General Community Quarantine, will be lifted up, and if the people are not ready to still observe social distancing and all other preventive measures, it will spike again because the virus is here. No, we have not yet resolved the killing of the.
That's right.
So sir, dito po sa mga areas under ECQ, ano po yung nakikita niyo that the schools would really need help with, like connectivity po ba, platform, content, or gadgets? Like if the private sector were to come in a concerted effort to assist education, paano po makakatulong?
Yes. Essentially, for example, what we did when the community quarantine kicked in, that's a month ago, is we have to introduce DepEd Commons. No? The DepEd Commons is already in our program, but not to be launched at this time because it's imperfect, it's incomplete, there are so many loopholes, etc. But when the quarantine came in, we were forced to make it live. Why? Because there are still some lessons undelivered for the last quarter of the year. That's the first thing that we need to do. So we populate DepEd Commons with materials that would answer the last quarter of the year, to deliver that last quarter of the year. And then after that would be on how do you deliver the assessment or even the grading of the students, which we have resolved that in another computation, in another formula, and in another approach. This time, what we are now preparing, how do we deliver education for the incoming school year, where there will be first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter, and fourth quarters under this condition that we have. We will be approaching and we will be calling upon the private sector and all other sectors of society on contributing all the learning and digital contents that we can provide for every grade level and for all across all sectors of society, so that our learners can access these materials, whether they are face to face, whether they are at home, whether they are homeschooling, or whatever modality of teaching and learning. do we apply in any of these status or in any of the areas that we have, whether they're low risk, high risk, or medium risk. The important thing here is we make all their learning materials available, maybe at one place, maybe at different places, but we make all these things available, and the learners, parents, and teachers can access these materials, whatever the kind of modality that they have or that they will employ. So what we did right now is to, for example, we called upon the support of Globe and Smart, make access to the DepEd Commons free. And they readily answered to us and said, yes, we will zero rate DepEd Commons. And that's so we already have a solution when it comes to loads. Even children, parents, and teachers with zero load in their cell phone can access the DepEd Commons, can access the materials. No? That's one big leap that we need, that we have right now. But the second question right now is that not all materials in the DepEd Commons are inside DepEd Commons, because there are some others are links only outside of the DepEd Commons, that when you go outside of the DepEd Commons, you still have to incur that kind of load or that kind of rate. So this is what we are now resolving right now, that if possible, with all willing educational partners, to put all the materials in the commons in a certain kind of protocol, so that when students, teachers, and even parents access them, they still enjoy that kind of free access. No? And that's one of the difficulties that we're having right now. No? So, because there are some initiatives that are voluntary at this time and that are free, but there are still some initiatives that might incur expenses on the part of external partners, and that we also have to respect. No? But at this time that we are doing these things, we are now looking at some kind of a collaborative platform or a partnership alliance where we can pull in whatever digital resources that we have, digital contents that we have in one place or in several places, and have them accessible to all our learners and teachers, whatever is the modality of their teaching and learning style would be. That's what we are now looking at.
Thank you. Thank you, Yusek Elaine and Jelix. We'd like to bring in Eileen on what's Google's take on this.
Yeah, so we actually have free tools and we're ready to support DepEd on this one. In fact, I've been working with Yusek Elaine's team for deployments across the Philippines to provide as an option using Google Classroom and Google Meets across schools. But of course, we wish that the telcos would provide some support, for zero rating classroom and Meets, so that the students and the teachers can use it. And of course, another thing is we're ready to also help DepEd to provide training for their master trainers, their IT officers, and their HRD also, so that the teachers who are keen to do distance learning can learn how to actually do this. And content-wise, of course, DepEd Commons can easily be connected to Google Classroom, so that teachers can just click on a button and it will go inside Google Classroom. But all of this will, there's a lot of pieces working towards making sure that that deployment will be successful. And we've been working with DepEd for more than 10 years already. So hopefully we can, soon bring that and be ready for the opening of classes in August. It's like 3 months is just very short period to prepare for that one. I have other deployments in other countries which has taken a year at least to complete and be successful. But in time, working closely with DepEd and of course other support channels will be able to support the Philippines for this one.
All right. Thank you. I think Edric wants to say something. Go ahead, Edric.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's exciting to see what the DepEd is doing and Google and these platforms. Maybe it's just some ideas along the question of how can the learning continue, and sabi nga ni USEC, the learning and education must not stop. One of the things we've seen in our space is, the expression, it takes a village to raise a child, no? So like in this time, the Bayanihan spirit of people helping other students learn. For example, barring infrastructure challenges, there are moms who are teachers in history and arts, and we've been seeing children gathered together in Zoom, where that mom will now carry on a lecture so that the students keep learning, right? That's one idea we've seen, where they gather people nearby that they know so that the learning carries on. And then another area that we've seen is many of the teachers who are concerned about whether they will keep their jobs in the private school because of the way that the outlook looks. They're now working with parents who are teaching, and they're becoming academic coaches. So again, a village, right? You have teachers working alongside parents to help them as they teach their children, so that the learning and the education keeps going. So those are two ideas we saw in our space. And if people are thinking about ano bang pwede natin gawin, what can we do while we are trusting and waiting for DepEd and this infrastructure of maybe even the telcos to bring out technology where it is possible, you might want to look around you and see what you can do. And as you look at what you can do, there are people who will receive that, right? People who want to teach, and you can use Zoom platforms like I mentioned. Or you can be an academic coach alongside parents who want to be able to teach their kids. They have the time, they have the capability, maybe some resources, but they don't have all the know-how. So teachers can now walk alongside them. So those would be a couple of ideas. Since your question from the viewer was, how can we carry on? Those might be ways that we can help in our own circles right now as we're waiting for this whole thing to unfold.
All right, thank you, Eric. Let's bring in Yuki. What do you think?
Yeah, we're not as big as Google, so we cannot really give away everything for free as Google can. But yeah, one of the companies in this industry, we are more than willing to collaborate with Department of Education as well as other players in industry to really solve this situation. But it's not really a short-term solution that I think we're needing, because this corona is, we say new normal. So it's going to last like years from now. So we really need some sustainable solutions, which, like private sectors can sustain for years to come. So yeah, I don't really have a idea, but yeah, I mean, if there is any way that we can help out DepEd to come up with the short-term solutions, yeah, we're more than willing. Actually, we are working with the external partnership of DepEd already.
Yeah.
And yeah, this DepEd Commons is a great initiative, and I like to help out inside or outside of this initiative as much as possible. And yeah, of course, to add to that, yeah, Kuiper already has the content which is fully aligned to the Philippine curriculum, DepEd curriculum. So it's already ready to use for like Jelix mentioned before, grade 4 to up to grade 12, already including those advanced content.
All right, thank you, Yuki. Lastly, let's have Rosanna. What's your take on this?
Hi. I said a lot of things that we can help, but I remember that our main work is a head tutorial review center. We actually teach students, even homeschool students, and we can also teach parents how to homeschool their children. We've been doing homeschool support for 10 years now, and for the training of teachers and principals, we have been doing it for free. So that's our contribution, and I hope that our internet in our country can be better and far-reaching. But there's also still the problem of gadgets. But there's a lot of smartphones now which are very cheap. Maybe we can give to our teachers, but still, how can they deliver during this quarantine period? So that's a problem. But we're really, really committed to giving our part, our share, as we've been doing for the past 20 years.
Thank you, Rosanna. So I think there's really a lot of notes, no? A lot of the questions. We really apologize to the thousands of viewers. We had about 14,000, 15,000 simultaneous viewers, and the questions were coming in 1 second, one question every second. So, but the key issue here is really the delivery mechanisms. I used to work with telco, and we worked with, or of course, terrestrial technology and satellite technology as well. I think Jelix earlier in his career was also with Knowledge Channel, and of course, both of them together were in virtual campus. I don't think um, if this is going to be the new normal. I think Yusek Alain, these are the people who are willing to volunteer to support DepEd and the education sector. Sobrang, so many people in the last mile who need to reach out. And I think it's going to take a lot of not just resources, but talent. What Rosana was saying, you're already experienced in homeschooling or tutorials. So yung mga methods na yan, yung mga methodologies that's already there can already be used because at this point in time, I think it's really DepEd is the main agency, but it's really education is it really takes a community to educate
That's
uh,
right.
people. No? So we in the practical learning company believe in social learning that people can learn from each other, from sharing, and and that's why we have those books on the practical entrepreneur and the practical learner. So I guess this is already a de facto volunteer group. We have bounced back PH education sector, you said Alain, no? And next
Yeah.
week we'll be having. I don't think this is enough. I think we need to have a part two somehow to discuss like delivery mechanisms. This time with the telcos. We have the talents for we have Google, we have Quipper, we have Ahead, we have homeschooling, we have practical learning, we have e-learning, we have the DepEd. Next time maybe we can delve more into the delivery really to the last mile. So for example, satellite technology is a lot cheaper. We just need to rent transponder space and get receivers. I think there's technology outside of the country that we can actually deliver um, education through television using satellite, using your own channel, parang DepEd channel or Knowledge channel. And it's not that expensive, come to think of it. It can be a
Yeah.
consortium that we can work together on education. Ano na kami, volunteer na kami kaagad, everybody. So,
Actually, Nato,
yes.
just to, it just came to my mind right now na the areas where we have ECQs and we have the high risk of the virus and high occurrence of the virus are urban cities. And
HUCs. Yes.
these urban cities have the kind of signal that we would want to have when delivering education in their
Yes.
school, in their home. Okay? And when we look at the last mile schools or last mile communities, where there are apparently no occurrence of the virus, there are some isolated islands, isolated mountainous areas. These are the what we call the last mile schools. The last 20 to 30% of our learners in our population. Ang maganda, wala yung virus doon. They can still have that class that we normally have. They can have face-to-face classes. No, so
That's right.
kahit wala silang internet doon, pwedeng ituloy doon yung face-to-face. So, that's one consideration that we're looking at. Ang talagang delivery natin ngayon ng digital contents, nakafocus tayo dito sa urban centers. Nagkataon naman sa urban center, mataas na yung cellphone ownership, mataas din yung cellphone signal occurrence. Kaya pwede naman natin pagsamasamahin yung mga yan. Hindi pa rin maiiwan yung ating mga last mile school.
That's right. That's right. So it's 4:23. What we'll do is we'll do our last statement. Okay, let's start with Edric. Yes, Edric,
Sure.
you have to say first. Yes, go ahead.
Thanks for having me here, Nato. And I echo what you said, no? USEC, we're here to support you however you need the homeschooling sector. And in fact, because we are so passionate about working together and helping families have solutions, paplug ko na rin, ano, there will be a online Philippine homeschool conference from May 11 to 15. You can just look at the Facebook page, Online Philippine Homeschool Conference. It's building itself fast. It's happened very recently, and we would like to invite USEC, yourself. We're inviting other USECs as well to give perspective and help, see how we can work together in keeping the learning going. And then finally, po, the last thing I want to say really is for everyone who's thinking about what can I do to keep the learning going, even as we're working with these different agencies and private sector groups who are amazing, let's not forget that there's always the opportunity to keep teaching the values, the life skills, even as we're worrying about the infrastructure with the formal school systems and the learning there. And because we're all stuck at home, may pagkakataon po tayo to now go back and strengthen character in our children. Because as we know, as the Filipino people, if they have good character, the rest can follow. So that is my encouragement to many parents who are looking at solutions. That is something within our control right now.
Thank you, Edric. Can we have Rosanna to give a few last words?
I hope na laging ma-prioritize din yung education like food and water and air. Because dyan lang talaga tayo magiging successful in life. And at college pa lang ako, it's my dream to help improve the education in our country. And I've been doing it for the past 25 years. I hope that I can do more. We've been helping a lot in the education area, but there's only so much we can do. So sana yung mga nanonood ngayon, they can also contribute in many ways. In some ways or one way or another. And magtulong-tulungan lang tayo and we can really lift up the education of our country, the standard of education in our country, whether may ECQ or wala. Thank you so much to all for listening and staying with us this 1 hours.
Thank you, Rosanna. All right, can we have Yuki say a few words before we go?
Yeah, thanks Nato for having me, and thanks for Derek for inviting me to this great opportunity. As Sir Edric mentioned, that if we can, as a parent, I'm a parent too. If we can educate ourselves to become teachers and sources of education to our children, that will be the greatest scenario. However, we still believe that teachers are still the primary source of this educational intervention and the source of learning for students. So as a Quipper, we are also preparing to add more features to cope with this situation, so that teachers can also provide something like a live lessons over the internet on top of whatever we have right now. And again, as I said before, we are more than willing to collaborate with any parties, including government and also other private sectors. So I hope we can get through this situation as one. Thank you.
Thank you. So is Eileen still here or okay? So let's have Jelix.
Yeah. So first of all, to you, said Alain, sir, you have bounced back here, ready, so willing to help DepEd and even private education. And in fact, we are launching an initiative called Education's New Normal. It's a digital transformation project where we are enjoining the private sector to help in this transition. And to our teachers, I would just like to echo what our founder, Jason De La Rosa, has written in his book. He just launched the ebook today, and it's available online. There are three things that we'd like to share with you in this time of crisis. He said, let's try to first adapt with an A. to the situation, and then two is to adopt with an O, new ways of addressing teaching and learning, and not to be afraid to do so. And third is to be adept with the new skills that are required of us in this challenge. So thank you all for listening, and thank you all for joining. And of course, we invite you to several other webinars like this. Thank you, Nato and Lisa.
All right.
Thank you.
So before we go, can we have Lisa Kalane give us last words?
Thank you everybody. Thank you Nato. Maraming salamat sa pag-imbita nyo sa akin dito at sa ating mga ibang panelists. Maraming din salamat sa pag-volunteer nyo at magsama-sama tayo para maibigay natin yung karapat-dapat na edukasyon sa ating mga kabataan. One thing lang that I would like to share to everybody is that we are looking at ways in the department to actually open school year come August. No? Gusto nga namin mas maaga. Ang problema lang, ang magdidikta sa atin dito sa pagbubukas ng klase ay hindi yung kagustuhan ng Department of Education, hindi yung kagustuhan ng marami sa atin. Kung hindi, kung ano ba yung epidemiology ng virus na ito, ano ba yung risk na meron tayo ngayon dahil sa virus na ito. That is the one thing that is dictating us on the date of the opening of classes. Not because we feel we would like to open immediately classes or that we should start it as soon as possible or delay it a bit, etc. Yung epidemiology talaga ng virus at saka yung risk. That's one thing that nagsasabi sa atin kung kailan natin dapat simulan uli ang pasukan. Anyway, pwede naman tayo magsimula kaagad pero hindi naman kinakailangan face-to-face doon sa mga lugar na mataas ang risk. At doon sa naman lugar na walang risk, pwede naman ituloy katulad ng ginagawa rin natin dati. Anyway, ang isa pa namin tinitignan dito ay kung paano aayusin yung buong school year na matapos ang school year natin next year na hindi papatak sa summer. Dahil ang ating mga eskwelahan ay hindi nakadesign sa summer study. O mainit ang ating mga eskwelahan, no? Sa dinami-dami ng design ng mga DepEd schools, when we start redesigning these schools, we redesign them kasi dapat malakas ito at kayang hindi siya dapat na magalaw ng bagyo, earthquake, o ng ano pa man. But we forgot na kinakailangan palang i-design din ng ating mga eskwelahan para pwedeng mag-aral ang ating mga bata, ang ating mga teachers kahit summer. But that design is not available to us right now. Kasi nga, hindi ito nakita for the last several years. Kaya we might be instituting several changes again on para hindi tayo umabot sa summer period, para hindi mainit yung pag-aaral ng mga bata at saka mga teachers, no? So maraming po salamat sa inyo. Maraming salamat sa pagpunta niyo rito. We need to bounce back, no? There's no other alternative. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusek Alain. I was thinking kanina, when you said design for schools na pwede sa summer at saka malakas, may kaibigan kami na gumagawa talaga ng green design. So anyway, one of these days we will introduce him to you. Anyway, we'd like to thank everyone. We have so many people in the audience. We have earlier we had 15,000 simultaneous views, and this just goes to show you how big the stakeholders numbers are, and mabas yung mga pangangailangan that we really need to focus on the delivery of education to so many people. And with that, also we concluded, Jason's still here, I think our founder, and of course Bounce Back PH already has an education sector group, which is about 2,500 volunteers. And these are all leaders in education that would like to volunteer already. So you have a volunteer base na boss late. And of course, we'd like to also greet my professor, si Prof. Gili. I get well soon, and we pray that together we can bounce back as a country. Then everybody with all the talents, the skills, and the resources that we can pull together, we can really become a first world nation quicker than we expect. And this COVID-19, I think, equalizes that opportunity for everyone. And for as long as we make our education really inclusive for all. So with that, we'd like to thank, of course, DepEd, Ahead Tutorial, Whipper, Homeschooling Global, um, the Practical Learning Company, and Google Education, Google for Education. Of course, our e-learning partner, Learn, and the Practical Learning Company. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank you. Maraming salamat po sa pag-attend ng ating webinar. I hope this is not the last, and we will reach out to the education sector as much as we need to, and hopefully next time we can have the delivery guys, the telco people with us in the discussion. With that, we conclude this webinar on education in the new normal. Thank you and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you.